Episode 16 of Strange Brow Radio. I'm your host, Tobe Johnson. We're freshly back from Enumclau, the Claw, Washington State, near Greenwater, underneath the shadow of Mount Rainier, the third International Primal People Conference. That's what we're going to talk about today. We have guests lined up from the show, attendees, and we're going to get the inside scoop. I'll tell you more about them in a minute, but first our sponsor, Feral by Aaron, who hit it out of the park at the conference. Gangbusters. Bob Gimlin walked away with the crow drum. You too can order yourself a Bob Gimlin crow drum. You'll have to go to Etsy to get a look at it. Go to Etsy, look at Shaman-inspired, museum-quality spirit tools by Aaron Jackson. That's Feral by Aaron, E-R-Y-N. Okay, we'll be right back with the guests of the Primal People Convention. The third International Primal People Convention is now over. For 72 hours, like-minded folks gathered inside a rustic lodge underneath the shadow of Mount Rainier in Bigfoot country. Some experiencers, some wanting to learn, and, well, some I would just call plain experts of dealing with the paranormal Sasquatch phenomena. Now, did everybody feel that way? No, but there was definitely the rushing overtones for 72 hours of paranormal Bigfoot talk. And so I had a chance to get a lot of firsts. People that had never done a podcast before spoke to me, that brought new information spoke to me. And so what you're about to hear for the next couple hours are these conversations with attendees and speakers from the Third International Primal People Convention. All right, we are here with Brian Bland, witness and knower, and Sean Fay. I guess we'd call you a long-term witness or cultivator of Bigfoot activity in and around, we'll say, Southern Oregon. Near Eugene, Oregon is probably good enough. So we are at, what do they call it, the Third International Primal People Conference at Enumclau, Washington. Brian, you're up next. I think, actually, no, you opened it us up here, so you were already...
No, I'm up.
You're up next.
No?
No? You're coming.
Mitchell is up next, then I'm up after him.
Okay. Tell people what you're going to speak about.
I'm going to speak about Sasquatch and how they connect people. Like Lisa got connected in through the glyphs, whatever, right? It's a continuing thing where they connect people and then it just goes on and on and on. And
yeah, but you've had a lot of interaction. I mean, you go out from your Facebook. It looks like you go out every week.
I go out as much as I can, yeah.
Yeah. Into some of the most beautiful territory I've ever seen.
Yeah. Yeah.
An area you called what?
God's country. That's what I call it.
That's a good name.
Yeah. It's pretty nice.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're 10 minutes from like pristine lakes and mountains and rivers and creeks and unlimited forest.
And a tremendous amount of glyphs and gifting and signs. So you even wrote a book about this, you and Tom Cantrell, right?
Yeah. And
right. Tell us about that.
Well, my part was talking about some stories that related to glyphs and because there's usually a story behind the glyph or whatever, like there'll be something, there'll be a reason for it or whatever. So I just tell the stories about finding the glyphs and what some of them mean and what they meant to me and some of the magical things that they did, like.
Describe for people that don't know what a glyph is. What do you mean?
It's actually, if it's for you, it's actually, they can attach their intent to it. They can attach their consciousness to it. It's actually an energetic message, so that when you look at the glyph, you can get the message, if it's for you. But on a more basic way of looking at it, it's sticks that are form symbols like A's, H's, complex things, even like complete sentences or whatever. It's a form of communication that they do with sticks. Quite often they peel them and they will stand out really well against like the forest path or the mossy green forest floor or something. So they're a form of communication basically.
What's the most common type of glyph that you get?
The most common one I've seen?
Yeah, the most common
Probably
that
X.
you see. An X?
X and an A, probably.
I'm going to stop someone here. Barb, can you join in real quick here? I know you're in the mid. We're here with Barb Shoop, who helped. She helped. Yeah, Barb Shoop's here with her hookah pipe.
And the mushrooms are coming in.
No, wait a minute. Don't include me in this.
Well, just real quick here. We were just talking about glyphs and doing kind of a free form format here. He was explaining what glyphs were, and you were saying you can imbue intentions within the glyph. The glyph design itself is part of it, but you're saying the intention behind it is also something.
They can utilize anything with energy, like they shapeshift with energy just by consciously changing their shape because we're energy beings. They can change their shape to a bird or something. They can enter your dream. They can do mind speak. They can place a thought in your head. They can manipulate time, set up events. That in our understanding would be 3D linear,
Right.
But they're setting it up like little things along the road that you run into it in.
Right. They're all like time locked and time sensitive
their understanding
things.
of energy is beyond words.
I could give you a good example of that for that applies to this.
All right, let's hear what Barb
Let me
said.
just say one more thing.
Well, real quick, let me hear from Barb.
Okay, so our keynote speaker wasn't here yesterday.
Right.
Okay, so Mike in there used to be my boss up at the store in Greenwater. Okay, so he was in Oregon yesterday on his way back, and he stopped at the rest area just over the border. So he has a bumper sticker on his car that says Greenwater and a Bigfoot. Well, our keynote speaker just happened to pull into the same rest area and saw the bumper sticker and approached him and said, "Hey, I'm speaking at a conference there on Sunday." And Mike said, "Oh, the Sasquatch conference? No, I think it's going to be done on Sunday. You're probably speaking on Saturday." "Really? I should contact somebody. I don't have a phone number." Mike gives him my phone number. He sends me a message which confirmed that, yes, you're speaking on Saturday instead of Sunday. So now he's here and we'll have our keynote speaker tonight.
Oh, wow. No way. Yeah. That was a big setup.
That's a perfect example of what he just said.
I generally forget my train of thought if I'm interrupted, but I think I remembered it this time. Or did I? We're talking about energy, right?
I'm sure it was important.
Sean, it was really important. Go to
Sean, how do you feel about the fact that they set up time-coded things like this?
I think, glyph, the best description would be like a pictogram. And like Brian said, there is energy attached to it that's directed at specific people. More commonly, Lisa and I, we see X's and asterisk type formations. And I get a lot of, looks like the letter P. And I think they're trying to recognize me or let me know that there's,
So that would take like 3 sticks, a line, and then a kind of a triangle at top.
Right,
Okay.
yeah. Looks like a triangle with a long side on one.
And it's interesting that you guys think that these are energetically active because we started using those dowsing rods. And sure enough, over the glyphs, the copper wire will cross, and sometimes it'll actually direct you to where another glyph is, so you can kind of just follow right or left or, test these out there. Did that thought ever come back?
It did, yes. This is really good because this is, like I said about their understanding of energy or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, they can even place their intent and emotion into a thought and give it to you. That's a layman's way of saying it. I know there's a more educated way to say that, but you understand what I mean, right? And I know this for sure because they're constantly, all these things, I get examples of it. And the best one I had of that particular one was Arla was talking to my clan leader. She's looking up the hill and conversing with him, and they're, one funny thing was they were having a really humorous conversation, and he asked Arla, he says, "Why do you ask me questions you already know the answer to?"
I'm just blocking the wind. That's all I'm doing.
And he kind of scolded her a bit, but in a real tongue-in-cheek, funny way, like just. And then he asked her something, and she said, "Why do you ask me questions you already know the answer to?" So they had a real good rapport going. While they're talking, like I was only a couple of years into it, so they never showed themselves to you right away. So as she's talking to them, and I'm trying to look up the hill to see them, they're behind me, like but 10 times that loud, like the wood knocking the fastest, and really
and
get my attention. I'm turning around like I couldn't help but look.
Faster than a woodpecker.
Well, it wasn't a woodpecker. It was them.
But I mean, I'm just to give an example to the audience. We're talking about like a
So
like a machine almost.
Or whatever. So, but anyway, this is the thing about the energy, and this is really revealing, because Arla, at one point in the conversation, felt this energy coming at her. She could feel it. And I think she actually said she could see it in her third eye, or see it in her mind's eye. And it was a cartoon lips coming at her. Cartoon lips coming at her. And it entered inside of her and kissed her heart. And when it did that, I was watching her, and she was instantly burst into tears. It was like she was really overcome with emotion. She said, I've never felt anything like that before. She was like, wow. And Arla, to say wow, she's impressed, right? And, he projected his emotion into that kiss, energy, and she felt it.
Cartoon lips.
Cartoon lips.
I love that. Like the Rolling Stone album cover coming at us.
Those cartoon lips on your heart, baby.
Since this was such a big success, no, I know.
Barb, I know we got that connection going.
Barb, since this was such a big hit, I mean, how can you not do one next year? Is it already in the talks?
We've talked about it, yeah. Well, Tom's got another conference to work on in Georgia, and I would imagine as soon as he's done with that, his focus is going to be back onto doing
2020.
This again. Yeah.
Okay, and I love this venue. Everyone is totally into this.
Yeah.
My old stomping
By the
ground.
way, are you coming up to the Barb and Gabby camp out in British Columbia?
In July, I think.
You're coming to the Blue Mountains, aren't you? Oh no, Greenwater.
I think we're going to do one closer.
Come on, aren't you coming to my hometown, my friend?
Our Blue Mountains.
I'll do one. I got to get a passport. So we're here with Brandon Tennant. He's in charge of the main T-shirt operations. Now, a lot of your money goes back into Idaho, so I assume some of it goes to Meldrum. Do you work hand in hand with Jeff?
Oh, no. These are all my designs, all my T-shirts. Okay. The casts, however, those are Jeff's.
Okay.
They're replicas of some of the more famous casts that Dr. Meldrum makes, and I just send that money back to him.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So he just sends. We usually go to the conferences together, but he had other arrangements this weekend, and I couldn't get that far with my trailer.
Now, it's pretty rare that you would see Jeff add a kind of a paranormal, putting the word people alone on primal people and calling them forest friends, things like that. I haven't seen him step out of the box of science that much to come to an event like this, although I'd be curious to eventually see him show up at a place like that. You think that's possible?
Oh, he does. Yeah, we just came back in February. We drove over to Nebraska, and the Nebraska Bigfoot Conference was just called a Bigfoot Conference, but they focused mostly on the paranormal, the
woo factor
side, the woo factor.
Right. All right.
That was the majority of that conference.
Yeah. We're down here in the hallway near the restroom, so apparently, periodically, you'll hear people running in and out. Okay.
In a hurry.
That's right. It's really cold and windy out, though, so we don't have the opportunity to go anyplace else. So let me ask you, have you seen anything that would go into the category of the strange and unusual associated with Bigfoot? And where are you at with the whole theory that that's maybe a paranormal link to it?
Interesting question. I am more of the biological end. I'm what you'd call a science guy.
Right.
However, I have had some audio experiences that made me leave the area without understanding why I left the area. It was as if we were invited to leave, and we left. And
you all did it together, or was that
a friend of mine? Yeah, but that was not something I could confirm as a Bigfoot. It was something that I can't explain. We were up there looking for Bigfoot. We were up there in the spirit of science and gaining knowledge, and not afraid of anything, we thought. And then we left in a hurry. So
you decided to leave in a hurry based upon the fact that you had a feeling, or did you have anything that came inside your mind that seemed remote, like mind speak?
No, that's the funny thing. We don't know what came in our mind. All of a sudden, we just felt like we had to go. It's time to go. So a lot of people associate that with the paranormal. Some people associate that with, primitive instinctual memory. Like you hear a rattlesnake for the first time in your life, you know it's a rattlesnake, don't touch it.
Right.
And you may not know it's a rattlesnake, but you're not going to touch it.
Right.
Why did ghosts go blue anyway?
You heard it here first from Doug Charters, Comedy Act Specialty. Yeah, I mean, as far as like the weirdness to it all, there seems to be all of these little ancillary stories that pop up, and then there's the big whoppers, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I say whoppers, I don't mean that in a derogatory word, but that's probably the most common one. It's just like, you know what? I had this weird urge to leave.
It was a feeling, and like you can't describe a feeling. You can't. It's hard to describe love. It's hard to describe hate. It's hard to describe why you left a place that you drove 6 hours to get to.
Oh, you didn't mention that. 6 hours. Yeah, and how long did you stay?
Oh, we spent the weekend up there, and
Okay.
and it was the first time we'd ever found tracks, and I'm convinced they were tracks. I know something solid left those tracks, something more solid than me.
Right.
And so I'm still convinced I'm looking for something in the physical realm. But like I said with the rattlesnake analogy, you don't know what other senses are enacted by scent or sounds or things that we see that we don't recognize we see. If the people are confusing that with cloaking, or if they're just peripheral vision catching movement, or
Right.
I wasn't there and I can't explain it, so I'm
Right.
I don't know. I have not seen anything cloaking yet.
Are you open to that experience?
That's another good question. As far as the Sasquatch story goes, I'm pretty firmly entrenched in the physical, scientific realm of it.
Right.
But you might say I believe, as much as I hate the word believe, because I've seen enough evidence to keep looking. What I don't believe in is ghost. But I think I've seen a ghost. So it's a little hard to rationalize those things in your mind.
Right.
So belief is a very powerful and dangerous word.
Right. Yeah. Well, skepticism and then confirmation, kind of in that order. You know what I mean?
And it would be nice if we could understand everything that we perceive.
Yeah.
And firmly pack it away in the knowing section. But just particles information don't always add up.
No. All right. Thanks for talking to me. We're here with Keith Bearden from Georgia. Mm-hmm. You came all the way here for just this Primal People Convention, right?
Yes. Kind of had to. Sean and I actually decided to do this. We came up with the idea to have a conference. And we'd done two, and we hadn't had one in a while. Tom had just finished a conference last year. So I pitched it to Tom after we gave him the idea, and he took it. So we kind of worked on it together for a while.
Yeah. So
And he pulled his committee in. And
you put a lot of work into this. You showed up. You have a booth here, beautiful jewelry, artwork, and you have a book. Tell people about your book.
Well, I wrote that book back in 2015 after I'd had a few years of experiences and started out, just like a normal guy out in the woods doing my thing, hunting and fishing and enjoying nature. And all of a sudden, a crazy thing happened. I started seeing and hearing things that were kind of unusual. Ran across my first track, and when I seen the track, a lot of the things that I'd been hearing and seeing all came together, and everything changed after that.
And the name of the book again is?
Forest Friends of the Night.
Forest Friends of the Night. Where can people find this book?
You can find it on Amazon.
Okay.
Go on Amazon, just go in and type in the name of the book or my name. It'll pull up. You can also order it at any bookstore, and they'll get it in for you.
And now you had your worldview kind of rocked. I mean, they alluded that to a couple times. Arla was talking about your worldview shifting and changing.
Paradigm change,
And it takes more than footprints probably to have that happen. Tell people what that moment was that shifted Keith from maybe flesh and blood to this otherness.
Well, there was really two things. Number one, the first thing when my world kind of started the change and I had a shift, the first shift, I call there's two, was when I did see the first track that validated what I'd been hearing. And when I seen the track, it wasn't a human footprint. First of all, it was on our hunting property, gated. Nobody could get back there. It was the middle of the winter time. It was a barefoot track. It was huge. And the barefoot track was 7-8 inches wide, which is way bigger than a normal human. And it had what I learned to see, and took a photo of it. It had the break in the middle, the metatarsal break, I think is what it's called. So when I saw that, I immediately began researching, going online and looking up the Bigfoot stuff. And once I started doing that, I got in touch with some people online, BFRO first, Arla, through Dr. Melba Ketchum. She introduced me to Arla on Facebook. Started talking to her. The BFRO came out, talked to me. We went through that whole thing. So yeah, that's where everything kind of started with learning.
Seeing that actual track, and that was several inches wide. How long was it?
It wasn't that wide. It was only about 11 or 12 inches long.
Okay, gotcha.
But yeah, it was extremely wide. And when I saw it, I knew immediately, it was nobody. Right. We don't have people running around out in the woods barefooted out there because it's very, very dense where we went. As a matter of fact, it's so dense through our property, 450 acres, we had to walk the creek to get through it. It's just too much to try to get through.
Now, where's Keith at with the interdimensional, supernatural quality of these creatures? Or what do you think of that theory, and have you had an experience?
All right, we're going to that side. Okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, since we're kind of in the vein of it here.
Well, what I've learned is always keep an open mind to anything and everything. Is that something that's real? Absolutely, yes, it is. And have I experienced? Absolutely, I have. Even seen portals on our hunting property. I've had my son actually took a picture of one. So yeah, I've experienced that.
Well, let's talk about that. Don't go away from that. Right. You've seen portals. They're on your property. Are they in certain areas? What do they look like? Describe them.
All right. Now, you're the first to hear this. I don't think I've even told many people about this, so this is kind of new.
Okay. You mind that I'm recording this for later use? Okay.
And the reason I call it a portal is, well, first of all, let me describe. My son seen it first. He seen a big light in the woods, and he said when he saw it, it looked like there was a fire, So he's worried about our property burning. So he goes closer and closer, and it's just a big, bright light just hovering in the woods. And he said there's a little bit of a swirl to it. He took a photo. He brought it to him. Of course, I couldn't see the swirl in the photo, but he was describing it to me. And where that happened at, there were several instances I would go down in the area, and I'd be around it, where I would see something appear and it would disappear. I would see just images, dark objects, but I could tell there was something weird going on in the area. So I kind of avoided it for a while because at this point in time, I'm still not all the way to where I am now convinced of what I'm seeing. My mind's trying to gather all this information. I didn't even put this in my book because I couldn't explain it. It was something I couldn't even put down in words what I saw, so I just kind of left it in the background. Now, I've been talking, to Joe Hauser today and a few other people, but through the years, after listening to other people, I'm quite sure that's exactly what it was. I talked to Matthew Johnson when I was out there doing a conference a few years ago.
I like that, Magic Johnson. Do you feel like that's linked at all to the Bigfoot activity on your property?
Yes and no. I do think, as I think what Scott said this morning, they have 1 foot in our world and 1 foot in the interdimensional world. The thing that I know about them, and the thing I know about me and our world is our world's vastly unexplained. There's a lot of things going on that people can't explain. Is it supernatural? No, it's natural. It's just that we don't understand it. So now it's become paranormal. It's not our normal. But the Bigfoots don't have anything. They're normal every day. That's become a normal thing to me. The things that they can do, yes, that's paranormal to us. But yeah, I think it's all linked. I think that this entire world's linked. Every living organism on this planet's linked.
If you had something to say to people that want to get involved with this, don't really know how to, what would you tell a newbie and give them advice about how to go forward and looking into the phenomena, maybe things they could be prepared for?
All right, well, I wrote a book about that very thing, and if you buy my book and read it, it'll tell you all of that. Okay. The main thing everybody needs to know is have an open mind, have a good heart, and know that they're not out there to hurt you. Go into this thing with total respect of them, right, your environment, which is their home, and yourself. The thing that everybody needs to understand, when you go into their home, think of it as somebody coming to your home. If somebody comes to your home, do they open the door and walk right in unannounced? And how would you feel?
Right.
So what Arla taught me is when you go out, say hello, who you are, introduce yourself. Let them invite you in. Take it slowly. When you go into their home or their world, treat it with respect. Treat them with respect. Talk to them, get to know each other, and over a period of time you will establish a relationship just like you would with a neighbor.
Right. A rapport. So are they actively coming in close to the house, or are they on the periphery still of your property?
They come into our camp on a nightly basis. Whenever we're camping, they come right in. And then I talked about that earlier. Tom even talked about that yesterday. You know, they will come in and look into your tent. They will come in to our camp and mess around with things. We've got a couple of young ones, and they play jokes all the time. They're hiding things. They'll come in, and I think one year we were actually doing a little mini conference right across from camp, and we could see our camp. But the little guy I call Nightcrawler came into camp while we were doing it in the daytime, and Arla had a frying pan she always left on the stove. Well, he put a big nice piece of quartz rock right in the middle of the frying pan while we were out there talking. And we could have all looked over and probably seen it happen.
Right.
Yeah, they come right in. It's nothing for me to... Well, we've seen them in our camp. We were having a group chat right before dusk a few years back. And behind Tom, we had a couple of tents set up, and we had a couple of girls coming in, and all of a sudden they stop just before they get to the fire, and they're all pointing. Their lips are quivering. They look. So Tom turns around. We all tried to turn around and look. There were two of them standing right behind Tom. So, yeah, that was pretty cool. They'd never seen them before.
Wow. All right. Thank you, Keith.
You're welcome.
We're here with Scott Taylor. Now, Scott is also a friend. He's a researcher. He's worked with us hand in hand regarding the Owl Moon prints and his own unique property that he's working off. Now, you have a couple different sites that you work out of, including your own house,
right,
and other people's homes. So you work with long-term witnesses.
Yes, long-term witnesses is where you really learn the most.
For sure. I tend to agree, and you're of a like mind that these beings walk in two worlds, that they kind of straddle between these two worlds. Let me ask you, where do you think they live mostly? This world or we'll call it their world?
I think they live in this world, but they are in their cloak state, so we can't see them. But they're there all day, every day.
Okay.
I think when we think that they're in another world, they're actually just mainly cloaked. Although they know how to use the portals to go wherever they want to. But I think they're here.
So when they're here, you feel mainly they're in that cloak state. Is that their natural state? Is that how they naturally are, and or would you call both states natural?
Well, both states are natural, but the state that they're generally in would be their cloak state. That's why it's so hard to see them. They come out of their cloak state in order to reproduce and have children, and they have to stay that way until the children are born, and they probably stay that way till they're raised. But they even teach the children, though, how to do it. But it's
a skill that needs to be taught, like anything else. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I think the real skill is vibrating slow enough that we can see them.
Okay. So the skill is to coming out of the cloak state,
right,
to show yourself.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly, yeah.
Let me ask you this here. One of the things that we're experiencing at this property here, and I want your expertise on this, is that now that we've recorded for over 1,400 hours, blah, 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 we have kind of evidence, I guess you would call it, that these things, when they're in their cloak state, aren't necessarily totally physical to the point where they're making sound. It's beyond cloaked, as though they're coming through space and time
Yes.
to interact. So when we're talking to the audience about being invisible, it's not only that, it's as though that they're not even here. They come here and then they go away.
So yeah, they in their they cloak, but then they can also change form, and the orbs are them. So they go wherever they want to in the orb state. You can travel great distances, but then they can manifest themselves into a solid form. And it's not hocus pocus, it's not paranormal, it's just them manipulating matter at the quantum level and choosing what they want to be at the time. They can come into your house, in that orb state, and they can, if they wanted to materialize, I suppose, but they generally don't. But still, they come in the house, and Dr. Matt Johnson's had one take a bite out of a maple bar that he left as an enticement, and that was in his bedroom. And so
I love that.
So they're an energy being. We're an energy being. We don't have the abilities to control it, but they do. And there's nothing paranormal about it. It's just physics that human beings in today's world don't have a great understanding of.
And Scott and I know how this sounds to the average listener, although if you're listening to Strange Brow, then obviously you're probably interested in the strange. But this is beyond strange. This really gets into the fringe of the fringe element, especially like invisible bites out of maple bars and, the Scrabble letters.
Oh,
can we talk about that?
Sasquatch Scrabble.
Tell them what I mean.
Okay, so we had a witness last year down by Chehalis, and he was in constant interaction with them, leaving. Had a stump, and he'd put trinkets and things out there, and then he'd watch them, move them, change them around, add things, take them away. So he got this bright idea of playing Sasquatch Scrabble. So he took all the Scrabble tiles and he put them on a piece of plywood, and he arranged them in a certain way, and they rearranged it. And when you kind of read what it was that they arranged, they were actually saying something. And so he saw what they did, he took a picture of it, he put it all back like he originally had it, went away, came back, and they had rearranged it again back to what it was. So
what was it? It was a language, right?
Well, basically what we think they were saying is, we speak through you. Is they were talking to him, and he was talking to me. But it became for him a little too intense, and he was having trouble coping with it, because once they got that he finally understood them, he'd been hearing them for years and years, but he didn't know what it was, and it was driving him crazy. And then we explained what was going on, and suddenly it all clicked and made sense. But once they discovered that he was really getting it and understanding the mind speak and the communication that was going on, it was like a data dump, and they were just pushing so much on him. It was like, stop. Right. You're overloading me. You're overwhelming me. And he ultimately says, hey, I can't do this anymore, and I don't hear from him anymore.
Right. He needed a long-term break.
He actually was talking about moving, selling his place and moving away.
And that doesn't always work.
No, I told him that, you can do that, but you move 50 miles down the road to, say, Castle Rock, and they're going to beat you there. They'll be there waiting. There are certain people that I don't know why, but they have been like tagged, earmarked or something, and those people have been having interactions since they were small children. And it's like the Sasquatches keep tabs on them through their whole adult life and are interacting with them at one level or another. When the kids are small, they don't understand what's really going on. And then when they become adults, they think maybe that they're going crazy until somebody explains it to them. But it's uncanny how many people that I've been called to go investigate their sightings, and I start asking them questions and probing deeper and deeper and deeper back into their history, and find out they had, like one gal says, yeah, I remember as a 2-year-old, which that's about as far back as most people can pull any memories, of being taken out of my bed by the hairy people and then brought back before morning. And then, oddly enough, I got her husband off by himself, started talking to him kind of the same way about, tell me about your past and all that. Well, he'd been interacting with them since he was a small child too. And those two get together. So those two together, now they've got Sasquatches as part of their life, and they've just gotten used to it. It doesn't bother them anymore. But now I imagine that their kids are probably, kind of clued into it too.
I mean, you have a BFRO patch on your jacket. Do you feel like sometimes you should have like a paranormal investigator patch as well as like a merit badge for MUFON? I mean, you find all these other patches that you should be wearing when you go to talk to these people. Don't you feel that way?
Yeah, to a large extent. Publicly, the BFRO will not really talk about what they call the paranormal part, or the woo-woo is what some people call it. But they're talking to their audience. Their audience is the general public who has no knowledge of what they are. And if you hit the general public with the paranormal side of it, it overwhelms them and they dismiss you. But there are BFRO investigators who have transcended that and understand it. No, this is just part of the continuum of the learning of what these creatures are. And then, you're going to run into this paranormal stuff through your investigations. You're going to see cloaked beings. You're going to find out that there's more than just Sasquatches out there in the dark at night.
You'd mentioned little people.
There's the little people, which I haven't personally dealt with, but I've talked to other people who have. And there's other kind of weird stuff out there that maybe is not something you really want to be interacting with. Pretty scary stuff.
All paranormal, all supernatural as well, right?
Well,
just not physical.
The both. They seem to be able to kind of materialize when they want you to see them.
So they're straddling between two worlds.
Two dimensions.
Right. But these are darker.
Some of them are darker, real scary stuff. But the Bigfoots aren't.
No.
Yeah.
Do you think any of them are? You think they have that in them? Like we have individuals that are in jail, incarcerated as, crazies and whatnot. They must come in that variety too.
Well, there may be a few here and there, but they're a connected race.
Okay.
So it'd be real hard for one of them to be abnormal and criminal, so to speak, and the others not know it.
So the hive strain.
It's almost like a hive mentality.
Yes, right, like the Borg unit in Star Trek.
Well, yeah, kind of like that.
Bit.
They're a connected race. Right. We have the potential to be, but we kind of lost that. We still certain people can telepathically or through mind speak communicate with each other. I mean, how many times have you been thinking about an old friend that you haven't talked to on the phone for 2 or 3 years, and suddenly the phone rings and it's them?
Even deja vu, which is extremely peculiar when it happens, almost like a glitch in the Matrix where you're experiencing all time all at once, and everything is a field of energy, and then it's gone. And it's almost like a real forlorn kind of feeling, like, oh no, I was in that moment. I was in the Matrix. Hey, Lisa, do you have a second? Okay, we're just going to finish up here with Scott, and I want to talk to you next. Yeah, come on down. It's all good. Lisa and I, Lisa Faye.
Go way back.
Lisa recently married. It's been over a year now. Yeah. Yeah. And you've been to a couple of these conferences now, but when I first met you, it was basically a Facebook friendship that kind of blossomed over time into meeting Sean, your husband now, and your kids. And you just said right out, like, hey, we got them on our property. In fact, we got them on audio. We're living with them. I'm curious about what you may know. And I said, well, I'm curious about what you may know. And so these friendships formed. And now you're just kind of used to it.
Yeah, I am. In fact, when I first started to notice them, I was all by myself in an area, meaning I had nobody else that I knew that knew anything about them. So I started researching it on my own, actually. And the only way I had access to anything was the internet. I didn't know anybody. So when I moved to the area we are now, and I looked up Sasquatch and Oregon, and your name popped up. That's how it all began.
Oh, that's right. And I remember.
Yeah. So But yeah, I've had a lot of paranormal Sasquatch activity. It in my whole life has been intertwined with paranormal, but the Sasquatch activity has been what has really stood out for me to be like intense and wonderful. And I don't know, ask me a question, because I'm not really good on the fly with my words.
Oh, no. You were leading someplace here. I mean, as far as how these things entrench themselves into your life, and Arla speaking earlier about this being kind of a mirror effect, and you get a lot of self-reflection. You learn about yourself. Like, guys are learning about ego in this field all the time. Like, how do I handle evidence? Like, is it about me? Is it about the work I've done? Should I dress up like Squatch Commando and promote myself? And then women are just, they're way more laid back about it. So I think they struggle less with it. But let me ask you this. Do you ever struggle with kind of those kind of things? Like, are you learning the lessons that they want you to learn?
That's the hard part. They did show me a lot through the glyphs. I know that you were talking to Brian Bland about the glyphs. And they started connecting me to other people through that. And I had to learn some really hard things about myself and about those around me. And what they do is they lead you to a series of things that make you reflect. And sometimes what I do when I find those is I take a picture of it. Always take a picture of it. And sometimes I don't know what it means, but it will come to a point when I'll think, oh, that is what that connected it to. Some event in my life. Usually it's a major event. It is tied to ego a lot. It's tied to emotional development. I don't know if you found that with the glyphs that you're leading to, what you were led to. I mean,
I don't know as much as yours. I mean, I want that experience. I want to be able to dive inward and see what you're seeing. I'm just more in awe of the fact that something has occurred that is unexplainable. And I know that's like a base knowledge, but it's maybe the dumb part of the man in me. Just like, whoa, they've changed sticks. I can't believe they have fingers. But,
Okay, but do you remember the time that you showed me, I told you to make the glyph. That was your signature. And what did you do? You made that hand, right? Okay. And they showed me that you acknowledged them. And what was it, like about 2 weeks later? They showed me your glyph on the opposite side of the property that you made your glyph.
Oh, yeah, right.
Do you
there.
remember that?
Near the front door.
Yes. Yeah. So that was them saying, we know that Toby was here. We know that this is his signature, and we acknowledge that.
And the thing is,
we forget that.
We don't ever see them do this. Like, we say they so easily, so casually, but we've never seen them leave a glyph. So what do we do with that? When we say they, we're bringing the baggage of Bigfoot, but we don't know.
No, we don't. And I wrestle with that a lot too, because sometimes I think, is it little people? Is it angelic beings? Is it fairies? Is it,
It's not a hoax. We ruled out hoax.
No. And who was it? It was Keith Bearden that was talking about glyphs that were left in the span of moments. I have seen that time and time again. I've seen a footprint. There was one time I was raking out part of the pasture and raking, and I turned back around and there was a huge footprint in the middle of what I just raked. And it was a Sasquatch footprint. I don't know how it got there other than, a lot of times they're on my brain about, I wonder if they wonder about us. I wonder if they're watching what we're doing. And it's kind of like, hey, yeah, we are. And we just heard what you thought. And like you say, who are they? I don't know. But I really feel like they keep us guessing. They keep us introspective. And I think that's what they want us to be.
And they keep life wonderful.
For me, they have been.
They keep life wonderful. So, like, when you're going through a dark period, let's face it, we all go through dark periods, and you have this baseline of magic, which is where I put
Right,
Sasquatch.
right, I agree.
It levels all the other crap out. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. When I will agree also to the point where you talked about them coming to you in your dark times, there were some dark times that I absolutely had them interacting with me in the most beautiful way that led me to tears. And they let me know that they were watching, were caring about me, and were carrying some of my emotions as they would carry theirs, which is beautiful. So part of me thinks that they are, there are a lot of people who say, oh no, those are demons, and that's the Christian part of me has always wrestled with that. But I've only got that their energy is caring and almost of that realm of like the higher purpose.
Right. And you and I kind of were brought up in the same
Right.
style, right? My father was a pastor. I grew up in a four-square Protestant church, and there really was an A and B to good and evil. There was none of this minutia or blue, this gray area. I call it a blue area. Maybe it is a blue area, but I've never felt personally that I'm experiencing something trying to lead me down a dark path by masquerading as a Sasquatch.
There are some people who say that, but you have to go with what your gut says. And my life has been nothing but richer and more emotionally connected than I ever have been before. And I'm forever grateful for them being in my life, because it's led me to you, it's led me to other friends, it's led me to friendships. Yeah,
and we've watched some of our good friends kind of disappear, and they're still involved with the phenomena, but yet it was Bigfoot that brought us together, and it was Bigfoot maybe that brought us apart. I mean, in a lot of ways, this obsessive nature of Sasquatch kind of pulls people in weird directions.
It does, and those people ebb and flow in your life, depending on whether or not you need them in your life.
Right.
Lessons that you learn from them, things that you can all share with them. Sometimes they need you, sometimes you need them. But yes, they have, that has been the binding thing, but it also has been some.
Right.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah.
All right, thanks, Lisa. We're here with Marcia Moore, who is also the proprietor of, how do I say your studio?
CMR Studio.
CMR Studio.
Really kind of pig Latin for my name if you look at it. It's just
Oh,
CMR.
I got you.
But CMR is kind of a unique story there, because when I lived in Florida, CMR became a very iconic character for a story that I was creating about ancient Florida. So she was kind of like this shaman type woman.
So you took Marcia, split it in half.
Exactly.
Kind of like Oprah did with Harpo Studios.
There you go.
Okay,
Yeah.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
And you work hand in hand with this mystery of the elongated skulls. I'm extremely curious about how you got started into looking to this mystery, and would you call it a mystery? I mean, it seems like a genuine mystery that these elongated skulls not only exist, but they've kind of been secluded and ignored in the same breath by the people of South America. And I don't know, talk to me about how this all started for Marcia.
Well, I think we've made everything a mystery because everything seems very complicated, but I think it ultimately is very simple. But how I got started was, I'm an artist. So I've just gathered tools with life chapters. And I lived in Florida for about 17 years. And while I was down there, I started to create a story, kind of hopeful animation about ancient Florida, pre-Spanish. So I was diving into some of the mound builders down there, the Calusa Indians specifically. They were called the Shell people, and that's where the CMR character comes from. But as I was creating everything that you would, maybe through even like an entertainment company, I was kind of my own little studio, and I was creating 3D sculptures, traditional sculptures, paintings, sketches, digital artwork, and also kind of writing and fleshing out these characters. So while I was doing that, these characters started to have and form elongated heads, a lot of them. And I found that to be very curious. And then through social media, I hooked up with Brian Forrester, who's alternative researcher down in Peru, that specifically tunes into our ancient Paracas down there who had elongated craniums. And I sent a 3D sculpture that I had of an elongated head with a face. You know, it was not a reconstruction, it was just a character that I had come up with. And I said, you know what, maybe show your audience, and this will give them an idea of putting a face on one of these elongated skulls. And when I did that, that just took it to the next level, because people hadn't seen a face on one of these skulls. So that really tapped into the next level for me as far as getting more in tune with this information globally, because it's all over the planet. And
not just in Peru, this phenomenon of
this
elongated
phenomena,
skulls.
yeah, it's all over the planet.
You say all over the planet. So where? Where else besides South America? You say like hidden in the same manner, like in Russia, or how are they housed? Because in South America, they're just kind of shoved in the walls there and kind of forgotten about. I mean, they're not even entombed properly. Some of the towns in South America just have them next to the street corners.
Right. Unfortunately, you know, down in Peru, it's desert area where the Paracas were along the coastline, and the remains are there because of the desert. So you have the skulls, but nothing's intact because of grave robbers. That's pretty prevalent down there. And selling that information, selling those antiquities. So that gets all over the planet, number one.
So not only the antiquities, but the information of where to go find them.
Yeah.
That's all worth something.
I have yet to see a full body ancient Paracas. I've only seen the skulls. I've never really seen their bundles. There are the bundles, but I've never seen one like laid out to know what the height would be, or how it's shaped, or is it different in the way it would have been walking, and you know, the pose and everything. So, but anyway, through the ancient Paracas and through the DNA, that takes us over to the recent DNA takes us over to the Black Sea area. And through that area, it also goes up into Eurasia. And for me, I'm very in tune with our indigenous communities, meaning if I'm going to find some information, first I'm going to start with my own intuition, and then I'm going to go check out our indigenous communities and see what kind of oral tradition might be relative, see what kind of stories, legends, see what kind of regalia that they might have worn, you know, because tall hats, tall things usually means, wow, what was underneath that hat, you know, and there's a lot of that all over the world. You see that all over the world. So I have really tapped into Eurasia, and some of my latest reconstructions will show more of a Eurasia style, following some of the indigenous communities from up in that area. So,
is there any evidence that they migrated a certain route? I mean, were they conquering the sea and coming over to certain areas, or is this like during Pangea when the continents were all housed together instead of spread apart?
Well, I think our peoples 2,000 or 3,000 years ago were definitely getting around. I mean, they were. You look at the Northwest, Pacific Northwest, our indigenous communities. These are canoe people. These are maritime sailors. They get around. They went down to Hawaii. They went down to New Zealand. They went everywhere. So there was trade going on, tons of trade. I mean, I looked at Florida as being kind of the Star Wars kind of Tatooine, like the hub, so to speak. Because
Florida has that rap today,
exactly,
by the way.
Probably does. So, but that's what I felt. It was like everybody was coming to certain areas in Florida to do ceremony or actually bring their dead down there. And they came from hundreds of miles away, and there was tons of trading and stuff going on. So.
Right. All right, the characteristics of the elongated skulls, they have, not only are they long, but the volume inside the cranium itself. When I watch Brian Forrester do with LA the rice test, and they're pouring the rice inside the skull, the volume is quite large. So the brain capacity had to be large. What are the implications of that?
Well, I know that more specifically because of the reconstructions that I've worked on, meaning that the ones that were head binders and that were emulating maybe that 4% that seem to have been natural because they don't have that kind of north and south suture on our skull. And other anomalies.
Sagittal
The
suture, which
sagittal
is like
suture.
the vertical line.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And then, just looking at the eye sockets, just looking at the teeth, the jawline, I mean, it's extremely robust jawline. It's really hard. Anthropology reports will come back, and I'm like, I don't know about that. I mean, it's just so difficult. You just are like, I don't know if that. You think it's a female, it comes back a male. You think it's this, it comes back this, and it's just they're really very much anomalies. So in working with the reconstructions, I'm like, okay, well, if I am elongating my head, what does that mean? What am I trying to emulate? And to me, it means that you're expanding. So of course, you're expanding your consciousness, which means, okay, maybe there is more capacity. I mean, it wouldn't be in the ones that were head binding, but the ones that were natural, maybe there was.
Right, and what you're saying is when you bind a head, the volume won't change. You can change the shape of the skull, but you can't change the volume. These beings have larger heads.
Absolutely. So the ones that were emulating this, maybe they were just trying to tap into that. They were trying to tap into that expansion of consciousness. They were trying to tap into the pineal gland, which was probably very in tune with these elongated heads. And that gets you in tune with a lot of things, telepathy, getting in tune with the cosmos. I mean, I think we all perceive things the way that it comes to us. So, meaning we all have different perspectives of how this could have been or what this means, but that is the information that I feel intuitively, and then through research, think that that's a great possibility anyway.
So do you work hand in hand with conventional science, trying to change their mind? Or how has this affected you, not only as an artist, but working with people like Brian Forrester, is that conventional science just doesn't allow for these theories here of, a super old Earth where megalithic structures have existed for hundreds of thousands of years, maybe even longer, and yet you were telling me about evidence of pottery with brontosauruses and people from South America living in tune with dinosaurs. I mean, how do you approach, your colleagues?
Well, for me as an artist, and I think I have license to say this because artists have that. I'm not a researcher, so I am intuitively. This is an intuitive approach for me, and I'm using all the tools that I have to reconstruct intuitively, and through that, I'm able to find the research. Meaning, my intuitiveness actually leads me to the hard research, and then also getting in tune with a lot of the alternative researchers like Brian. That he's about facts, and he gets it. He gets that information. So working with him and then working with my intuitive side helps me create a reconstruction interpretation, and you have to keep that in mind. I'm just interpreting this, but what it's doing is it's keeping your mind open to the possibilities, which then makes the next person go, wow, maybe I need to research this a little bit more.
How much is interpretation when you're actually working with the bones, the skeletal remains, and you see a high cheekbone, or you see a large jaw, or a big eye socket? I mean, as a forensic artist, right, they have certain parameters that they go to with where they're going to apply flesh. So some of it is kind of like there's fact-based stuff going on.
Absolutely, and I am not a forensic artist, but as an artist, I know enough about anatomy, and I do follow the steps that a forensic artist would follow. So I do follow the muscle tissue depth markers that you would put on the skull. I do all of the research as far as getting the reports from the anthropology reports to go along with the reconstruction. And so I'm going through the formula that one would go through as a forensic artist, and I'm reconstructing probably, I'm following that guideline, but ultimately it's still an interpretation, because even a forensic artist is not going to
things like eye color and what their teeth were like.
Exactly.
I mean, well, you kind of know what their teeth would be like because there's still a lot of them are there.
Yeah.
And red hair, this is an attribute as well?
It seems to be, yeah. Auburn hair seems to be an attribute of the ancient Paracas in Peru, and you do see that all over the planet with these elongated heads. You see that here in North America with some of our mound builder complexes. I mean, that's been part of the research. You have that, and that leads us to kind of where we are right now at a Sasquatch conference. I mean, you have a lot of different relationships going on, which is very intriguing. So you just have to stay open. You just have to keep your mind open.
Mind open, I guess that's a good way to end it, Era, with a giant head. Here's to open minds. We're here again with Marcia Moore of CMR Studios, and she's a neighbor. So maybe we can do coffee and talk about this at a greater length down the road.
Absolutely going to do that.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
We're here with Andrea Billups. We're at the 3rd International Primal People Convention, and she's a professor at what college again?
At Western Kentucky University.
Western Kentucky University. And I just introduced her. I've actually heard your name before, Andrea, probably just on Facebook, like the rest of the people up in the audience. But did you come all the way from Western Kentucky for this conference, or did you have business here?
No, I came out here for the conference and to see some people. I mean, this isn't the first time I've been out here. I've done some camping here in Washington State and in Oregon with different research projects, and so I've gotten to know a lot of people who are here at this conference. So it was a great opportunity to visit and to, and to listen, of course.
Interact with people of like minds. So, obviously Kentucky has its stories.
It does, and I've only been in Kentucky since last August, and I've already met some really interesting people, and I've gone out on a couple of expeditions with some folks. I've camped in a couple of places, and it's been interesting. I grew up in West Virginia, and I've lived in 10 states since then, and so everywhere from Florida to, the Carolinas, and I know that there's a Bigfoot tradition everywhere.
How did this start for you, as a child, or did you come into it later?
It did not start as a child. People have asked me that because of growing up in West Virginia and the mountains, and certainly there's a lot of natural Bigfoot habitat there, but not there for me. About 6 or 7 years ago, for some reason, I just started reading, and like everyone else, I would follow people, Facebook groups, and I would listen to audio. And as I'm a career journalist, and so I'm just naturally curious about a lot of things. But, I didn't realize what kind of a rabbit hole I was about to go down. And so in the process of my studying, I connected with some people. One of those people is a gentleman here in Washington State. His name is Dr. Matthew Johnson. And he invited me I had communicated with him online. He invited me to his research area, and it was in Southern Oregon. And little did I know what would happen to me there. But I want to back up just a second so I can explain this. In 2009, my partner and I purchased a home in Michigan. A home it's a modern house, and the back side of it was 2-story, but it was all glass, like floor-to-ceiling windows. Really pretty, but it backed up into the forest and into wetlands, and there were no homes around us, and there were miles of trails, hiking trails, and greenway and stuff like that. And I would hike there and walk for exercise almost every day, and there were places in that forest where it just got weird. There was a place there where you crossed a marsh, and it was a very tight, like, old pine stand, very dense, where where the sun doesn't shine and it gets noticeably dark. And I would joke, I told Steve, this is the enchanted forest, and but it scares me because every time I'd sort of cross into that area, I would get real visceral reactions. Just the hair standing up on my arms. I would just feel. Zapped isn't the right word, but really intense, a total energy shift, and almost this don't walk in here. And this went on for years. I would never walk in that part of the forest. And finally, I was just like, this is stupid, I'm gonna walk in there. And so I went in and I found the most beautiful area. I'll show it to you, it's on my phone. A great kind of it almost looks like a forest amphitheater, and there's a giant tree. Old hardwoods are there and pines, and where lightning hit this tree. And this is a giant tree that looks three-pronged, and I call it my angel tree. And I used to go out there, and I would take my Bible or something to read, and I would just sit in front of that tree. And I would walk around there, and this was sort of coinciding with my interest in Bigfoot, right? And I mean, I must have in the end, walked through there hundreds of times, and gone out there to sit. So I was there all the time, and I was visibly predictable. So it was my place. So.
But was this a conscious thing that you were doing to create a pattern as far as being predictable?
Not in the beginning. Not in the beginning. But so these things are going to collide. So I thought about Bigfoot, but even though I was out in the forest, far from home and alone, I didn't think anything would happen to me, nor did I think that I would have a sighting. All I knew is that I was definitely in great habitat, far from anything, with food, water, cover, and all of that. So subsequently, I came out here and met with Dr. Johnson. I'd never seen him before in my life. We went to Oregon, and we camped for about 4 days. No lights, no tents, no fires. We slept in the open on a ridge line, and well, that's when I became a knower. And people use that term in Bigfoot world, but that's when a lot of really crazy things happened. I've never been more paralyzed with fear in my life. I mean, he taped with a parabolic microphone the whole time they were there. So there's just no denying what went on there. But I came back from that really sort of in a different headspace, because my world kind of shifted after that, after what we saw out there. And he knew that they were there. He'd been habituating this area for 10 years.
Don't leave us in suspense. You're so good at that, Andrea. Tell us what you saw.
Okay, so
this is the journalist dragging out this. I want to hear.
I'm so sorry, I'm Southern. We tell a long story. So many things happened out there. One night, I was awakened, sleeping on a cot. It was freezing, so I was way down in there. And it's about 3 a.m, and it was like the forest came alive. The wood knocking started over the ridge lines. You would start to hear a whoop or two coming over, and it resonates because you're up. I'm a million miles away on like old federal forest land, and then we started getting the owl calling, and then really, really weird barking noises that almost sound like it was canine. And I mean, I'm talking about I'm having an out-of-body experience. It was all that I could do to jump in the vehicle that we had there and say, "Make it stop, Mommy, make it stop." And so, I woke him and he calmed me down. And for 2 hours, this racket went on, and this barking it's just the strangest noise. I mean, it felt like it was 30 feet away. So understand that we're kind of in a clearing, but we're just surrounded by forest canopy. But that's when I was like, holy God, what is out there? Because these are not sounds that are in the normal capacity. And, I'd heard people talk about whooping and tree knocking, and I was like, well, damn, if this isn't the truth, you know what I'm saying? And so that was one night. I don't think I slept for the rest of that night. Another night I woke up and there was a footprint behind my head that was about 5 inches long, and there was just one, like a tiny little footprint. And seeing that in person is also just a shocking confirmation, because clearly some little one had scampered up behind me in the middle of the night and stood there, and I was totally not aware. But one night we were out there, and he had his iPhone out, and he was playing music, walking around, played it for a really long time, all kinds of things, and we sang a little bit and what have you. I was starting to feel a little bit more comfortable at this point being up there, although I was frightened for days. And we had the strangeness going, the twinkling lights that we saw on the ground. We started to see eye glow, and then...
Describe the twinkling lights, because I know what you mean. the white lights generally, like little sparkles or glitter.
It's a very strange phenomenon, and I wouldn't even have believed it if I didn't see it, but it does look like those tiny little Christmas lights that you might string on that kind of burst on and off, and they're kind of low to the ground, what I saw, and they twinkle. I mean, it's like little energy pops that are going on around you, and you start adjusting your eyes thinking, is this happening? You know, and so that went on. Eye glow, we could hear some movement, bipedal, what sounded like bipedal movement, but nothing walked out and shook our hands at that point. But there was a clearing up ahead, and we were so high that the ambient light was shining through the trees. So I look to my left, and I see movement catches my eye, and then because we're in the pitch darkness, understand there's nothing there. The only light there is from the phone. So I see something move again, and I fixated my eyes on this point. And then the longer you look in the darkness, your eyes start to try to adjust. And I saw a shape, and then I was just having that terrible first experience that anyone has. You're just like, no. In my head, I'm like, no. I mean, my eyes are playing tricks on me.
This is what you came for, and now you're faced with it.
Oh my gosh, I did come for that, and I wanted the experience, but I have to tell anybody out there that, there's no bravery in this. There's no courage, because Dr. Johnson is 6'10", and whatever stood there and began to sway, just slowly, like you had to barely be perceptibly, but the sway was the movement I saw. Eventually I came to terms with it. It was at least 2 feet taller than he was, and that is when it hit me. I was like, oh my gosh, and up until that moment, I didn't really say anything to him, and he had seen it, and I don't know if he didn't want to scare me, but he didn't say anything, and I said, I started to articulate something. I can't even remember what I said, and he goes, do you see him? He goes, that's like Big Daddy, and I'm like, oh my gosh, and here's what I did. It's the truth. I looked down at my feet, and I grabbed the pants leg of him, and I'm 5'3", so I just plastered myself beside him, and if he took a step, I took a step. I could not move. And then every horrible thought that you have, now I've processed this, and so many things have happened to me since then. I'm in a different comfort zone. But then...
But watching you relive it here as I sit with you and we talk, I see what I see in so many other witnesses, is that you've been brought back to that moment here as we're talking, and I still see you.
My stomach is jumping.
Yeah.
I'm kind of almost shivering.
Yeah, it's a profound, almost traumatic PT. It's within the realm of a stress marker. I don't want to use the word disorder, but you know what I'm saying. There's anxiety involved with this still.
There is anxiety. I think part of it is, for me, was I've never seen anything that close to me in nature that's that big. Like a giraffe in a zoo is a different thing, but just something that it casts that kind of shadow. And this thing is back into the tree line. Like, I don't make out facial features. I just make out body shape in the shadow, and it's moving. And then I'm like, it could take literally 3 steps, and I would be consumed. Like, that something that big it could be on me in a hot second, but it didn't. And as a part of my strategy, just not to pass out, to like drop to my knees, because that's how I felt. I was like, well, 30 seconds have passed and I'm not dying, and 30 seconds more have passed and it's not stepping out of the woods. And Matt told me that there was another one, and on the other side of this trail that went back into the forest, a smaller one, and I saw the outline, and I was, again, dear God, it's not just one, but there are 2, and the second one was smaller, but still small being relative, and I'm literally shaking kind of talking about this. I mean, but they didn't do anything. They did not vocalize. I didn't smell anything at that point. It was just there, and
was it just you and Matt at the time?
Yes.
Nobody else was up?
Nobody else was there. Oh. We went up there together.
Okay.
I think he's taken a lot of people to his research area, really because he spent so much time down there, and I think he just wanted to confirm to the greater world, to take people there to see what he saw, and I think that's a pretty good strategy.
Was he
honestly,
hoping that you would talk about this and write about it? Was there?
There was never any of that
No.
discussion. He never ever. I want to be completely clear. I don't think he brought me there, so I would write about him. I think he brought me there because he considered me a person who had never done this, but who might have some credibility in the world. I mean, I'm a journalist. I've interviewed a lot of well-known, successful celebrity people in government and politics and what have you. And so, I mean, I don't know if I'm more credible than any witness. I don't think so, but I think he knew that if I were to ever talk about it, and I've thought long and hard about, talking about it, outing myself, At my office now, I have little Bigfoot stickers on my nameplate there. And my kids now, I have little Bigfoot dolls. But I mean, at that time, I knew far less than I know now. And so I came back to my forest in Michigan, which brings me back to what I was trying to tell you.
Coming full circle.
We are. Sorry, I'm a Southern person, and I
That's
tell
all right.
a long story. So I am out in my woods one day, and it's a beautiful day, and I'm sitting there. I'm doing everything that I ever do, and I'm still in the place where I'm processing what had happened to me in Oregon. And I said in my head, if you're real, then show yourself. Damn it, just show yourself. And then, of course, I thought, that is a horrible thing to say to someone or anyone. These, how dare me demand that anyone show themselves to me? But I don't know what made me say that. Nothing happened, of course. So I stood up, and I was going to walk back to the end of the trail, and it's a long walk, and I am about maybe 50 feet off a trail there, and I turned and I looked to my left, and there, moving like a jet, is something red. And I'm talking about, I've never seen anything move so fast in my life. And the thing that's notable about this sighting for me is that I saw hair, not fur, hair moving like in the propulsion.
That's the red object?
Mm-hmm. And the propulsion, this hair is swinging in the movement. And all at once it just went down, dropped down, and
Slammed down.
it went down. And I about stroked, because I'm like, holy God, is this what I'm seeing? And your mind goes to that place where you're going to process, is this a fox? No, whatever I saw is at eye level. Is it a flying squirrel? Well, I don't even know if we have those in Michigan. And for some reason, I start to walk toward it. Well, I'm by myself in the forest with nothing but a phone and a book. And so I take about 15 steps, and I hear nothing. I hear nothing. I see nothing. And then it dawned on me. You're in the forest alone, baby, and you are more than a mile from anything. And I turned around, and I took off running, and I am not a runner. And I ran as far as I could go until I thought I was going to have a heart attack. And I sat down on a log. And see, I'm shaking to tell you this part of it. So I sat down on a log, and I'm like, what happened to me? What did I see? What did I see? And this may sound weird to somebody, but I looked across the forest, and the terrain where I was rolling up and down. So I just looked across the way, and I'm out of breath, and out of the top of a tree came a log. And in thinking it backwards, this thing was not falling end to end. It went over horizontal, as if someone went and stuck their hands out and dropped it. And I'm talking about it's falling from 80 feet up. I mean, and in the distance, but I'm watching it go.
So you mean like rolling down horizontally, like you would roll it down a hill, but dropped from 80 feet up?
I mean, its initial fall.
It wasn't cascading like.
No, its initial fall. It was this log is about this big. At least it looked that big from where my vista.
So you're showing your hands about 2.5 feet.
And it's coming out horizontally, as if someone stuck their hands out and presented it, as opposed to heaving it, elbow over or end over end. It's just coming out horizontally.
Which is impossible, right? I mean, it sounds impossible.
It seems impossible, and my shock was like, oh my God, now I'm out of breath. Is something following me and trying to get my attention? And now I think that's exactly what had happened. It's like, we know you saw, and it's not just one of us, and we're going to get your attention. And, in hindsight, I now don't think that was aggressive. I think it was, ha, 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 we know you're out here. You're out here every day, and we see you every day, and we know who you are, and we're going to tell you. We know now that you know that we are, and so this is your confirmation. We are here with you. And so at that point, I became a marathoner. I picked up and I hauled ass out of that forest. I ran until I could, almost to my front step. And I called Dr. Johnson after that, and with the ridiculous, "You're not going to believe what's going to happen to me." And of course he was like, I believe what has happened to you. And he is a psychologist, clinical psychologist, and he was very good in terms of helping me to just process what I'd gone through.
Right.
But after that, in the time hence, I would come out here to your area, and I've camped a bunch of times and what have you, but I had all kinds of incidents that happened to me out there in that forest. I mean, just ridiculous things. Things would be left on my back porch. We had sliding glass door in our bedroom, like floor, like I said, huge sliding glass doors, and we never even pulled the blinds or anything because we faced no one, right? Well, I would have a giant maple leaf like stuck into the handle. There are plastic things left, like I said, back there. Sometimes we have a big lab dog who would at night just stand on the back of our porch and stand rigid. Sometimes she would just disappear. I mean, disappear for like more than an hour. And we were like, where is she
You couldn't
going?
get her to come back after calling her?
No, we could not. And then all at once she would wander back up, and she was completely happy. And our dog is a seizure dog, and she takes medications for seizures. And she has a funny gait. Sometimes she'll lose her back legs, like she'll fall.
Oh, right.
And some of my friends have said they think that the Sasquatches would sit back there. There's a gully behind our house, maybe about 50 yards from our yard. There was a gully that sort of sunk about 4 feet. I think that whoever lived out there came and sat in that gully and watched us all the time, knew what we were doing and knew that dog, and she knew that they were there too. She would stand in the same place, just like this, and look in the same direction, and then she would disappear. Well, one time I woke up, and at the very back of the property there was a weaving that appeared, like vines that had been woven in different patterns. And I mean, it went, just the strangeness went on and on. It's almost like something was knocking on my door and saying, hey, guess who lives out here? And we're here too. And so because I knew they were there, I only ever took a handful of people to visit there. So my friends Tim and Jim were the people who visited the most. So over Christmas, Tim had massive sightings. He owns a property in northern Michigan, and he very well knew what I was going through. And Jim had also had his experiences, and so we would meet for Christmas. They were kind of like my Bigfoot friends in Michigan. We'd meet for lunch every Christmas, and so we went out in the woods and said, let's hike. 3 years ago, we hiked, and we found trackway. Now, we were all as shocked as can be just to see this, because you read about trackway and blah, 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 blah. Everyone talks about it. But there it was, sure as day, and we took pictures. And I was like, no. So we came off trail, and Tim had a tape measure with him, and we measured this trackway that kind of came up and over the hill. It crossed the trail, and then we saw it again up the hill and over the trail. And these were... it's the thing that everyone says. It's single tracks in a line, and with a massive stride, And so, again, for me, I'm the doubting Thomas. I think it's my training just to be skeptical about everything. Right. I was like, I cannot believe we found that trackway, but I had 2 people with me who were like, that's a trackway. Fast forward, next Christmas, Tim and Jim came down. They said, you want to hike in the woods? And it was like 9 degrees. And we were like, oh, okay. So we go out there. We look around. We don't really see much. Nothing is happening. But Tim and Jim also had real visceral reactions in certain places out there, too. They knew what happened. And so we're coming back close to home, and lo and behold, we found another truckway. And this thing went, I don't know, maybe a fifth of a mile through the woods. But what was really notable about this truckway is it had a foot anomaly. What I think is the right foot had like a splay where the little toe was. It kind of digited out like this, like maybe a bunion or something. It was a very odd anomaly.
Did the toe come out, or did it have a bunion attached to the side?
You could see all 5 toes, and the little toe was out, and then there was a little like
a bone protuberance on
yes,
the outer part of the foot.
And it continued through every. We walked beside that truckway, and we were very careful.
It reminds me of the cripple foot Bigfoot cast, which I'll show you a picture of, where they have kind of a bony protuberance.
You know, it wasn't huge, but it was enough to know that it's this individual who's walking.
Right.
And so we walked alongside it, and Jim, who's pretty tall, tried to mask the stride. Not even close. And so this trackway went until it met up at another trail sort of over the way, and then stopped. It's just that strange, like, where did it go? We could not find it anywhere.
Okay, so it didn't just stop, it disappeared.
Okay.
Or,
what did it do? I mean, where did it go? And understand that in both these instances, it's snow. This is a trackway in snow. So it is just undoubtable, you know, it's sunken, heavy snow. It's Michigan and stuff. And so for 2 years running, we found this trackway. And so, I mean.
Same individual?
I don't
think. Is it hard to tell?
I don't think that it's the same individual. Okay. But whoever it was had similar sized tracks. You know, I don't remember the length, but they were similar and large. I mean.
Incredible.
Close. And so, you know, what do you do with all that? How do you wrap your head around that? You know, it's like I went through days where I thought this did not happen to me, and yet it was happening to me. And I think people, you know, one of the things I would say to people, these things are subtle. All of these things add up to something, but I'm going to guess that a lot of this was going on out there, and I wasn't paying attention to it. So in hindsight, and then, you know, now I would go out there. I found a structure. Pictures of the structure, a huge structure. I mean, huge, big enough for me to walk into, okay, off the trail. I'm 5'3", and I could walk in and not bump my head. And I took pictures of this. So odd.
And where was this at, the structure?
Right near where I'm sighting.
Okay.
I'm off trail.
And made with woven branches and sticks, the usual?
I think I stopped counting at like 106.
106. Wow.
This thing was, a tree had fallen over, and the structure, these branches were into that tree.
They utilized what was there.
They did. And again, I thought I was being punked, because I saw that and I was like, somebody knows my Bigfoot fascination. They have gone out there and they may be the MacDenny.
You're not being punked. I think we're all being punked. We're here with Andrea Billups. We're being punked by Bigfoot constantly, and we don't mind it happening. She's a professor, a journalist, and she's worked with quite a few people in and around Oregon, not only Matt, but Barb and Gabby, and gone out on retreats with them.
I've not gone out on retreats with Barb and Gabby, but I know Barb and I know Samantha and a lot of people who squatch in this area. Like I communicate with those people.
This is up near Mount Rainier in Enumclau and Greenwater. We're underneath the shadow of Mount Rainier right now. In fact, we're coming up on May, and snow is predicted today. So we're still in kind of like the shadow of the snowy Pacific Northwest. And so snowy prints could be something you could find out here in the back door. I appreciate your time. We are here with Joe Hauser of the Montana Vortex. Mind was blown. And you kind of knew that was going to happen to the majority of the audience, but being as immersed as I've been over the last 15 years with the subject of paranormal, Bigfoot, anything, I'd never seen anybody captivate an audience or a room the way you did. And so bravo for the work, because there's work involved with
Thank you. I appreciate
pulling away that kind of footage. Do they appreciate the work you put in there? Probably not. They can do whatever they want, and they don't want our heads to get too big with all the cool stuff, but that was some cool footage. And So for the audience that doesn't know what I'm talking about here, Joe showed through a closed circuit TV inside the Montana Vortex, which is your property, which I want to ask you about that property in general. But he showed footage of what looked like a light being of some kind,
Right.
interacting, kind of floating, morphing like you would picture an amoeba underneath a microscope into shapes. And it was physical, yet it was not physical. Did I come close in describing
I
this?
think you came very well. It appears like it's physical to begin with, and then it morphs into some sort of light or energy being.
Yeah.
And tends to float around inside the House of Mystery at the Montana Vortex.
And it's, okay, so the camera is panned out inside of a closed room, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the wood slats that we see in the background there are probably how far from the camera?
About 15 feet, 12, 15
Okay.
feet, yeah, something like that.
And so I would say between 0, which would be the camera lens, and 5 feet at the most is what appears to be light in the shape of an image, and it's coming from the left side of the camera moving to the right, and it is like midair, it is like jelly. It's very hard to explain. It's something you have to see.
Right.
So when can people actually see this for themselves?
Well, actually, I'm not sure about that.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I'm going to release it publicly or just keep it for select audiences like we did today and stuff like that.
Right.
This is the second time I've shown it at a Sasquatch conference. I've got positive feedback from it, but I don't have any need really to put it out publicly. I'm not looking for any acclaim on it. I think it would.
But you've seen so
change
much,
some
Joe.
people's world.
It would change it, and I'm excited to talk to you because I'm sensing so much of myself in you. Is that you've seen so much, and I've had baptism through fire over the last 2 years with all of this, but yet you've been immersed in it for years, and you've seen a lot of crazy crap. But this caught you off guard. Like, I could tell, and you even mentioned it, just like this one even surprised me.
Oh, yeah.
Right? The guy that owns the Vortex house.
No, when I came in and I saw that on the video or on the on the screen, I mean, I couldn't get I knew it wasn't recording. I couldn't get my phone out fast enough, and then I was actually shaking. The hair was standing up on my arms.
Yeah.
And I knew it was something that had never been recorded before. I mean, I don't think anybody has a being that comes in a physical presence and turns into a light or energy being like that. And so I think when Tammy came in, my wife, and started helping me video, we were both watching it, and we were kind of like pinchos, because this is something that's actually phenomenal.
And you asked for this.
We asked for it.
Yeah.
We went down, when we put the camera in the House of Mystery, we told the Sasquatch that are there that we're going to put a camera in there. We don't want to trick them. We told them that. And I left the camera in there for a day, went back the next day, and it was either tossed out the window or taken outside and put outside about 10 foot from the House of Mystery. So I took it back inside. I told them again, I go, look, you got to respect us too. I'm respecting you by coming down and telling you that we're putting the camera in here. If you want to be in it, that's fine. If you don't, then please don't come in the House of Mystery. But I really want to put the camera in here. And then it just came to me. I said, also, don't you think it's time that you showed people what you really are? And it took a few days before they came through or finally made the decision to come in there. But they did. And I think when you look at that video, I personally believe it is a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot. And I think that they are showing us in that video what they're capable of. Not even maybe just touching on what they're capable of, but they definitely have a physical presence in this dimension. They leave evidence, they leave footprints, but they also have an energy side to them where they can morph into this energy being and perhaps even into a large orb and fly off. Go through walls, stuff like that.
That was almost like a throwdown or a dare to them. Show people what you really are. Not show Joe Hauser. Did you already know? And you?
I already suspected.
Okay.
Yeah, I've suspected for a long time. And I've been on this path with the whole interdimensional energy being thing for a long time, but I just was hoping that they would give us something that was really definitive, that would really show people what their capabilities are.
So the Montana Vortex, the house, the property itself, how did you come in to take it over?
Well, I purchased it about 16 years ago. It was a rundown roadside attraction, and the people that had it really didn't know what they had. They've never attempted to measure the energy field or anything else. They just ran it. They just ran it like a roadside attraction. They knew there was something there. So when I came in, I hired some scientists to work with me, and we brought meters in. We measured the field. We've done it many times since then. We found out the field conforms to a Fibonacci spiral, and we knew there was one vortex at the House of Mystery. We discovered actually 3 other vortexes that we know where the lines of energy are on those two. And so we developed a guided tour based on what we discovered. We show people about 18 different demonstrations in the energy field. We teach them how to see their aura, play with their own energy field. And our goal is to educate people about the Earth's electromagnetic field and the different strange things that happen there. That the world's not what we really think it is. There's all kinds of things happening that if you look at it as far as mainstream classical science, you can't explain it. If you look at it in terms of energy and quantum physics, then there's explanations behind it.
There goes the toilet. That's not the end of the show, though. You're like a kid in a candy store in a place that you love. It's your business. It's your passion. Not everybody has the chance to do that in life. I mean, you are living the dream, not only of me, but countless other people upstairs right now, and you know it. Like, you're totally aware of the fact that this is going to surprise you every season, right? I mean, every season you build up on a new amount of information.
Right. Yeah, new things. We're always, you're right. I mean, I love what I do. I love the vortex where we live. My wife has been there 7 years now, Tammy. And she came in more skeptical, but over a period of 7 years, she's seen so many things too. And we talk about it ourselves. I think I mentioned in my talk today, if we go 2 or 3 or 4 days without anything happening, it's like we look at each other and go, nothing happened, what's going on, you know? And then invariably something happens. But all the time we give thanks and we have gratitude that we're able to experience this energy field and all the different entities and things that go through there. And you know, we tell them, everybody, we're thankful that we're here and given this opportunity, not only to be able to educate people about that kind of thing, but also just that we can experience it ourselves.
And you I mean, here you are in a place that you have lab settings set up. For example, the height measurement setting area is kind of like a sealed off little experiment that people can enjoy. But these little thinning veils or spots of the fawn, to use Alyssa's term, they're everywhere around the globe. People don't have to just come to Montana to experience this. Where are there places you can suggest to look? Place names, Native American names? I mean, where can people look for these to actually experience what you have as an attraction?
One thing we've noticed is most sacred sites in the world are in the United States where there's pictoglyphs or different things like that. Most of those places are in electromagnetic anomalies. They're energy fields. And the native cultures actually all over the world have recognized those energy fields. Most of the major cathedrals in Europe are built on energy fields. Notre Dame, that's an energy field. And most of those places were pagan sites long before the church came in and built on them and tried to get people inside. But
are these classical understood as like ley lines or power lines that intersect?
Yeah, there's a grid of ley lines that go all over the earth, both running north and south, east and west. And these ley lines are generally considered to be 60, 65 miles wide. And a lot of times these sacred sites are on these ley lines. And we've documented a lot of them between our Montana vortex and going all the way down into Arizona. But generally, no matter where you go in Europe or whatever, there's generally a ley line that a lot of these different things.
Do you follow these ley lines when you're on road trips?
We try to, yeah.
Okay.
We try to follow them, and if you look at the sacred sites, well, there's Pectoglyphs here, and then there's something here, and there's something here, and they're all in a narrow band. And then every once in a while, you get something that's outside of there. It doesn't mean that they all have to be on these ley lines, but there's definitely there's actually a pattern to them. One of our scientists. Imagine a geodesic dome. They're all triangles. We have the Bermuda Triangle. We have other ocean vortexes. But he has a theory that if you took a triangle and it had 54 miles on each side with an apex of 51 degrees, 54 miles is the square of the Great Pyramids, 51 degrees is the apex of the Great Pyramids. And theoretically, we believe there should be a vortex at each of the points on that triangle. Smaller vortex fields like the Montana vortex. And then they're all held into place by larger vortex fields that might actually encompass or control several of these smaller fields. So predictably, we have tried using that triangulation. We have predicted that there should be a vortex in Orla, Texas. We went there, we found a vortex field there. We predicted there's one in Delta, Utah. We haven't been able to go there yet, but we feel once we go there, we'll be able to find a vortex in that area. So knowing that they're laid out in a Fibonacci spiral, knowing that there's math behind it, this is not something that just happened by happenstance. This is a higher level of consciousness that's created these energy fields itself.
Did you come in with this intensive knowledge about, ley lines and Fibonacci circles, or is this all learned over a period of time?
I've always been involved in ley lines and that type of stuff, but all of the other stuff, the Fibonacci, the correlation between the pyramids and stuff like that, are all things that I've learned just in the time of being there. Our vortexes too have a unique alignment in that we have three of them. A 54-foot one, a 108-foot one, and a 216-foot one. And then the 435-foot one is further away. But they're all fractals. 54, 108, 216, 432. And nature tends to have many different things that follow fractal patterns. They get bigger or double as they go out. Plants do that. Same with the Fibonacci spiral. There's over 1,400 plants in North America alone that have seeds, leaves, or stems that rotate in a vortex spiral that conform to the Fibonacci number sequence. What's unique about our place, though, is the centers of the vortexes we can identify. Two of the centers are in a straight line, and one of them is off 19 degrees, approximately 19 degrees. Well, that shows up too, the Great Pyramids. Two are in a straight line, one of them's off 19.5 degrees. Orion's belt
has that.
Which, same configuration. So we're just a few degrees off of that 19.5. Interestingly, when Orion rises in the wintertime over Columbia Mountain, it matches up as a mirror image to the vortexes that are there. So it kind of gets bigger the more you look at it.
Yeah.
And
what about books or anything like that? Do you have? I mean, as far as a guy that should have a History Channel show follow him around with, uninformed British guys with cameras following you and all over the vortex, it should be you instead of the guys that, I love the Curse of Oak Island, don't get me wrong, but how far can you dig? Have you ever been approached by a major network or a book deal?
I've been approached by several different reality TV shows. I just interviewed for one about 3 months ago.
You turn them all down, or what happened?
No, I haven't turned them down. I listened to their proposals and stuff like that. We've actually shot a couple of reality shows that didn't make the cut. I participated in them. One of them was kind of a dorky show, but, it had some good stuff in it, and I thought I could provide some substance to it. Eventually, they kind of changed it around and did it in a different format.
So it's a possibility in the future.
It's a possibility. Yeah, I've been approached several times on shows, but so far, either I haven't made the cut or the show hasn't been sold to the major networks.
Okay.
Actually, in Missoula, Montana, we have a production company there that has done. They've done the Mountain Man, the Mountain Man show, Airplane Repo.
Oh, right.
Yeah, they have actually shot several different reality TV shows, and they've been there a couple times exploring possibilities and stuff like that.
All right, stay tuned, folks. It could happen with the right combination. Joe Hauser, Montana Vortex, incredible light being footage that was shown exclusively here at the International Primal People Convention. I don't know when you can see this footage yourself, so you had to kind of be here. There is rumor now going around, though, that there might be a fourth annual Primal People Convention in 2020. So this is in Enumclau, Washington. And thank you again, Joe.
Thank you, Toby. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. We're here with Pearl Parada, and she's written a book here called Bigfoot Myth or Reality, Manotang. And Pearl approached me, and I think you kind of knew a little bit about what was going on the property somewhat, that we're calling the Owl Moon Lab. But as far as like the handprints that I mentioned to you that have this white phosphorus chalky appearance here, you're extremely interested because you've been talking about finding this white chalky residue in areas for years.
Since 1991 is when I first found it.
Yeah.
And I was way out the riverbed, nobody around, and the rock was huge. It was as big, probably about as big as my body, long, and probably about 3 foot tall, and it had this white, powdery, chalky crystal stuff with a pounding rock on it, and it drew my attention. But I didn't really think that much of it at the time. I took a picture and then went on my route down the river. Well, I make this round about once a week. The next time I went out there, the thing was cut, like clean cut, right at the deposit. It looked like somebody had taken a lapidary saw or something out there and cut this rock. And all this white powdery stuff was exposed. First thing I did and my daughter was with me was put my finger in it and eat it. Well, I had done studies of the area. I know there's arsenic out there. Arsenic is white, powdery, crystally. I knew better than to put that stuff in my mouth, but it was the first thing I did. I called my daughter over. First thing she did was lick it, grab it, and eat it. Well, that made me a little leery, so I took samples of it. I had it sent to Oshkosh University, had a spectrum analysis done on it. Totally consumable. It's like a vitamin pack, except for one thing they couldn't identify. Very high energy, very, very high energy, and slightly radioactive. Well, to analyze radioactive substances costs more money and more extensive testing. But from all my research, everything I've done, it was pointing directly at this rubidium. And rubidium, number one, commonly alloys with gold. I find a lot of activity around old mining areas, old gold mines. If you look in the waste that they throw out, you're probably going to find some rubidium.
Like the tailings coming out of
yes,
the
yeah,
deposit?
they slag the
slag, yeah.
They don't use.
Right.
Well, rubidium is used in laboratories with it's called electromagnetic induced transparency, and they do use rubidium. Rubidium is found in all human bodies. Rubidium-87 has no known biological function. They haven't figured out what it's for, but it's still there. Now, as years go by, because I was saying this stuff's in nature. There is something in nature that actually holds a natural negative refractive index. Well, when I started this, they said, no, it's metamaterials. It's made in a lab. Well, here recently, they found this hyperbolic, tunable, natural negative refractive index material found in nature. Affirmation, confirmation, I've got it. I knew it was out there. I really knew.
Okay, so help me, Pearl, help the audience here. Are you saying that this rubidium, that this white phosphorus powder, helps initiate cloaking, invisibility of things like Sasquatch when they consume it? What's your theory?
On one of Bobby Short's pages, there is an article, and it's about the Clallam Indians up here, and it's from the Seattle Times, like 1924. And it talks about a native named Henry Napoleon who was taken, I think they were called Siatka, I can't remember the exact name that tribe used for him. But
Siatko.
There it is. He was taken underground through a long tunnel, and this is all in this article, to their dwelling, and he visited with them for a while, and in this newspaper report, it says that they use a strange medicine they rub on their bodies to gain invisibility, and that was in 1924 in the Seattle. I have a copy of it. I bought it. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't think it's coincidence. One thing leads to another. It was totally accidental that I found this. I had no idea.
So there's a rumor, well, if there was an article written about it, there was an article over 100 years old or thereabouts where there is a theory that a man was taken to an underground lair, taught by Sasquatch on how to use phosphorus, rubidium, and rub it on their skin in order to be invisible.
I'm not sure that he was taught, but he was told.
By who?
By the Siatko.
Okay,
yes,
gotcha.
yes, and they said that they use a strange medicine.
Strange medicine is what they called it.
Yes, they called it a medicine. Okay.
Which you consumed.
Oh yeah, which I did. I had no idea, that you rub it on your body.
Yeah.
Well, so that initiated a whole years of research. Then I go into photonic crystals and blue-green algae, because if it's a medicine, and I know what they say about assuming, but I'm just gathering that it's a compound. It's more than one thing. It's not just this white powdery stuff. You put that white powdery stuff on you, and I think it would shake off eventually. You're going to need something that would make it adhere, but when you have these photonic crystals, they too help with the negative refractive index. And it's high energy. Blue-green algae is high energy and can also give a negative refractive index. So, and I haven't quite figured out, I think there's 3. 3 is the magic number. I haven't quite figured out what the third component would be, but hopefully before I die, I am working on it. I will figure it out. Hopefully one day. I can't help it. I'm obsessed with it.
As far as like the things like the cloaking sheet that they use, like in China, they've come up with this cloaking sheet that covers people. Are they using this rubidium in order to bend light? Is this one of the
ingredients? No, them are done with mirrors and metamaterials. Okay. That's all
nanotech and whatnot.
Yes, made in a lab. It's not a naturally occurring material. Now, I know how this sounds. Now, I lived right out here 3 years. Bought a piece of property. No water, no power, no phone. I lived under a tarp. I was very primitive, but I was outside all the time. Coming back from the river one day, I had something following me. Wasn't really frightened, little nervous, wasn't really frightened, couldn't see anything. But I got all the way back to my camp, and it was subtle sounds, like a little twig breaking or branches rustling. I'd turn around, didn't see anything, but I felt it. You know, you can feel when you're being watched. You can feel it. Well, I get in. I bought an old, very old single wide, had a wood-burning cook stove in it, which still no water power phone, but I just stepped in the door, and I grabbed out of my ice chest a bottle of water, and I was drinking on it. I turned around, and there the thing is, right there, right behind me. When I turned around, I froze. I looked at him. He was locked in I'm getting excited. In eye contact with me. I seen him acknowledge that I seen him. His facial expression changed, and as soon as that happened, he disappeared. That's what got me just totally. I had to find out, number one, if there was any potential scientifically for this to occur. Years of research, years and years
Describe that moment where it disappeared.
It was like what they say. It was like he turned into a mirage and just vanished.
Kind of melted into the air?
Yeah, like just went invisible. Went invisible. Now, I hear a lot of people, because the more I study on this, they say, well, when they're invisible, there's an outline. Well, that makes a lot of sense. There would be a wave disruption at the edge of the body, and that will give you the outline.
Right.
I mean, the more I started researching this and hearing other people's accounts, it's like, man, there is something to this.
How would they activate that? Like if you had a
harmonics.
Okay.
Now I'm not positive. I can't prove it.
Right, because it's like a time-release capsule.
I think it's very, very low sounds that would be a catalyst. That would.
Really?
I really do. But like I said, I haven't quite. If I figured it out, I would be famous.
Like a Manchurian Candidate, when he hears his tone, he turns into, the robot that he's supposed to be. They have a tone that maybe switches on the cloak.
I think so.
Okay.
That's where I'm at this point.
Okay.
Like it's totally a hypothesis. But
It kind of reminds me of the theory that they use the scent gland out of skunks as a tool, a weapon to basically scare people away. They rub the scent gland on them, on the juveniles in particular, to keep people away from the youngins.
I could be, honestly.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
But it's fun to theorize.
Oh, it is. It
Endlessly
is.
fun.
And absolutely intriguing. And then when you start getting valid, I wrote my book in 2011. Just within the last 2 years, they have found that this stuff actually is in nature. Now, if you look at, there's a man called David Hudson, and he has this ormus, orbitally rearranged monatomic element.
Okay. And
it was taken into labs, and it vanishes. It vanished. They had it in a little petri dish, and when they heated it up, it vanished. They'd take a little spoon and stir it around where it was supposed to be. They moved it around, took the heat away, and when it reappeared, it was undisturbed. I mean, but I don't really use a lot of David Hudson's. That's pseudoscience, and I haven't really referred to it. I am really trying to go with academic, very scientific research and findings to validate just the potential for it.
Well, what have you done with the rubidium yourself to test it? Like, have you set up a lab and high voltage charge the rubidium to see what the response is?
No.
Would that be something you'd want to do?
Really, I know it sounds terrible, but it's what I've done.
You got to begin somewhere.
Yeah, you do. Honestly, this was done for personal gratification, for me to personally find out. if others have found this stuff, I would love to know about it. But I'm not trying to prove anything. I just needed to know because of what I seen, because it literally dropped me to the floor. I started crying, and it wasn't out of fear. It wasn't a fear cry. It was just a totally astonished, shocked, bewildered. I had no idea. I wasn't on the internet. I had no idea that other people had experienced similar things, watched them vanish. Now, 1999, I got on the internet. By 2000, I had found other people that had accounts of invisibility. Boy, talk about life-changing and motivation. Boy, that really got me going to research everything I could. I was getting papers as fast as they'd be uploading them. I was downloading them babies. I was on it. I've got literally hundreds of highlighted scientific journals and papers that I've sat and read and highlighted and read and highlighted to try to put this all together. I'm like I said, I'm working on it. It's a work in progress.
And you and I were talking in regards to the white powder being in areas that I've researched and lived at.
Yeah.
And it seems to be that this white powder is also left at places where there's poltergeist activity or where there's alien abduction or contactee experiences. So
I've heard that.
Right.
I haven't experienced that, but I have heard that.
So that third element may be off-world. Are you prepared to never get the answer if that's the case?
Well, that's where I'm at right now. I can live with myself now, but I don't like it very much. I really don't.
Yeah.
And if I figured this out, I don't know that I don't know that I would go public with it. I'm not looking for fame, for money, and maybe some things are better left alone. I don't know.
Have you ever been approached or felt in fear of investigating this phenomena, which would be maybe viewed as top secret?
Yeah, it's viewed as top secret. I'll go as far as to tell you MIBs are real.
Okay.
Yeah. I've had my experience with them.
Okay.
And it scared the daylights out of me. But and to the point where around 2008, I pulled everything, all my research, everything. I shut it down, pulled it off, withdrew. I happened to have a friend out of Virginia, CIA headquarters, who I had been working with, who told me that it was taken care of and definitely put my research back out there. So at the back of my book, I have my hypothesis. It's called photosynthetic piezoelectric induced transparency. I have gone to the National Library of Congress. I have copyrighted and self-patented all my research, and it is now in the back of my book, Manotang.
Pearl. Awesome. What was the date where this friend of yours, this contact with, you said with the CIA?
Yes.
The CIA, they basically gave you the green light again in 2008?
This was a personal, it wasn't the CIA, this was a personal friend who had retired from there, who had contacts there.
But she knew something and it was okay for you.
Yes.
And so when did they give you the green light again?
Well, it was 2008, approximately May, when I pulled it off. So by 2009, I was back up.
So a year later.
Yeah.
Okay. It would be interesting to see if there's any kind of disclosure in general that came around 2009 on other things.
I'll tell you what else is, what are they called now? Gosh. I had a website that they had my hypothesis when I first wrote it. They had it up, the Royal Forum. The Royal Forum had my hypothesis up. And this gentleman, and I won't give you his name, we back and forth for months. Oh, he was so interested. Hook, line, sinker, Pearl, you're on to something. Out of the blue, he contacts me, says, Pearl, I have to pull your research down. It's a matter of national security. I said, excuse me, I'm a Bigfoot researcher. You're kidding me. That's ridiculous. They pulled it down. Well, wow.
So you've had confirmation.
I printed from the national, from this website, this particular website. I printed it all out when it was still up. I have it. Yeah.
You could be sitting on, the golden egg.
If I am. I mean, like I said, this is for personal gratification. It's for me. I'm doing it because I need to know. I have been accused of, oh, Pearl, you're on drugs. Oh, Pearl, you're hallucinating. I mean, you're crazy. Everything in the book. But I'll tell you what, I trust myself. I know what I've seen. That's why I want validation for myself, even to show the potential for it to occur.
And none of it has to do with kind of getting back at the people that
No.
shamed you and just...
No.
Okay.
No, I know how crazy it sounds. I mean, if I didn't see what I had experienced, if I didn't, and somebody was to tell me what I'm telling people, I would think they're a little loony. I really would. Yeah. I know how it sounds. Yeah. I'm intelligent enough to understand when you tell somebody, oh, I seen that thing disappear right in front of me. That sounds a little far-fetched. Can't help it. Can't help it. It is what it is. I seen what I seen. And nothing but direct communication from God will ever change my mind. I'm that adamant.
Yeah.
I really am.
Yeah, well, you got me sold. We're here with Pearl Parada, her book, Manatang, Bigfoot Myth or Reality. Can people find this online still?
Yes, it is. It's on Amazon.
Okay, and you would appreciate if people would take a look. I would appreciate it. We've got a lot of work to do in the future as someone who wants to talk to you about their own phosphorus powders showing up.
Wouldn't that be interesting? I mean, you've found white powder. I've found white powder. I wonder how many others out there have, like, there's a picture of the rock I found. I wonder, people could walk right by that, and unless they were informed, they wouldn't even know. They wouldn't even know.
No.
You know?
No, in fact, audience, if you've found anything that kind of matches the description of a white powder either in and around a paranormal hotspot or out in nature in general that looks like it's been milled or made or crushed.
Yes, grinding.
Grinding.
Yes.
Reach out to me, reach out to Pearl Parada. Can they get a hold of you on a website or anything like that?
I'm on Facebook.
Okay.
Yes, I am.
And that's spelled Pirprihoda, Pearl J. Parada, Prihoda.
Yes. And don't eat it.
No.
Not
even if you're really hungry.
No, because arsenic is also found in nature, especially.
I think you said radioactive.
Yeah. And I know that's what I did.
Yeah.
But it's really not a very smart thing to do.
No, but she has a glow about her. And it's just so effervescent. All right. Thank you, Pearl.
You're very welcome.
So we're here with Tom Cantrell. I guess we'd call him the founder of the Primal People Convention. This is your third one, Tom.
Yes.
Great success, beautiful weekend. What'd you think of it all?
I'm absolutely astounded with the quality of people that turned out. I had some help in deciding who was going to be speakers. They weeded themselves out. Right. We have 15 presenters this weekend and 8 who didn't come for one reason or another. Some were logistics. Devin Masson is still in Togo. His plane doesn't get out for another week, so we had to scratch him. But the people, it's about the people who do come, and that's what you have to work with. At this point of the game, whatever is, and you work with that.
Right, and nobody in the audience really knew any different. I mean, it was so seamless the way things turned out. Did anything surprise you? Did you catch on to some new information? I mean, you're so well informed. You've been involved with the community for so long, but was there anything that leapt out at you as far as info?
Yes, Rob Alley just blew me away with the depth of research that he's done.
Right.
I was totally amazed. I'd like to be able to sit down and just spend the afternoon talking with him and learning what he knows. The other one is Marcia K. Moore.
Oh, yeah.
And her work is just amazing. And her research and our research parallelize one another so much, so closely, it's going to cross. It has to cross.
And Marcia is the one with the elongated skull. She's the artist that's doing the sculpey renditions over the actual plasticine skull.
And the skeletons from the burial mounds back east from the Adena people and such like that, 8-foot skeletons.
Mm-hmm.
How often have we heard, well, why don't we have a skeleton from of these beings? Well, you've got 8-foot Indians. The skeleton looks pretty much the same.
Mm-hmm.
And she's reconstructed that. Just to see that reconstruction is
These are red-headed giants too. I mean, this is what we've been hearing about all these years.
That's one area.
Right.
Yeah, that was in Nevada. The Adena people were back east of the Mississippi.
Okay.
The mound builder people, and look at the history of that. Those skeletons were exhumed by Smithsonian. Okay, there's records that exist of the digs and of what they found and everything. Now all of a sudden the skeletons have all disappeared out of the Smithsonian and nobody knows where they went. The skeletons from the Lovelock Caves in Nevada went to the University of California, Berkeley Library and disappeared. Why? Are the scientists that afraid of knowledge? Is it going to upset their apple cart? Or is it religious? Or, why? Why won't people?
Right. What is your conclusion here? I mean, you must have some theories as to the why.
I think it varies. It varies in with different people. Some people, it is a religious thing. It's going to upset. It doesn't say it in the Bible, so it can't be. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of things that happen in the world that weren't mentioned in the Bible. The Bible was written by men, and it's not totally infallible. What's there is good, but it's not totally infallible, and it doesn't cover everything. We're left. We have a mind. We're supposed to use our mind, and that's the gist. That's one. Some people are just afraid that they do exist. They're afraid to go in the woods because something might be there. Well, get out in the woods and see what's there. I tell people the only thing dangerous in the woods, wear shoes. Okay? The animals are not dangerous if you use your head and treat them with respect. I have walked within 35 feet of bears right down the road, right to them. And when they finally spotted me, they ran away. They're not dangerous if you use your brain and treat them with respect. Now, you get between a mother and her child, I don't care what species you're in, you can create trouble.
Right.
And so think about what you're doing. Learn about what you're doing. To go out and park your car, drive out of the city and go out and park your car at the edge of the wood and walk into the woods, you could find yourself in real trouble. I've got a little kit here that we'll be talking about today.
I was reaching for his fanny pack. It says, "What's in your kit?"
You have to be in class to see.
Okay.
But basically, it's stuff I need. If I broke my leg out there, I could live for 2 or 3 days till they found me. Space blanket. Mm-hmm. There's map. There's compass. There's a signal mirror. There's a first aid kit. Waterproof match case.
Tom's a tenured lumberjack too. I mean,
yeah.
You've been out in the woods how many years, Tom? More years.
There are people that say that I was there when the woods grew, but that's not quite true. But
right.
No, I started when I was 6, 7 years old, and I'm 76 now. So.
Is it most lumberjacks that see these, at least from the community we're in, obviously they don't talk about their sighting too much because of the good old boy factor. Is that your experience too?
Yes. As a matter of fact, I never told anybody for 35 years what I was doing and what I was seeing, because all they wanted to do was make a joke out of it.
Right.
And even then, I knew that they deserved more respect than that. When I was logging, cutting timber, running equipment, you don't see anything. You're making too much noise. You're creating a lot of noise. When I saw them was when I was doing my forestry work, when I was hiking in to do a survey of some type or another, because I would sit still and draw up what I had just measured, and that's when they get curious and come in, and that's when I started seeing them. And
now, when did your worldview shift from flesh and blood to this otherness quality?
Probably about 2010.
That recent.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
For all of those years, from 1958 to 2010, I had a world of amassed facts without any correlation. And then it started all coming together. Oh, wow, and looked at it from a different angle. I met some people that got me pointed in that direction. And there again, I went from the pure scientific mind. My degree is in logging engineering and forestry, and that's a scientific degree. So that was where my mind was. It's only when I shifted my mind to the point that there may be something else out there, there may be another way to look at things, that things started coming together and opened up. And it just creates a whole new world. Possibilities.
Do you think there's going to be a paradigm shift as far as like you had in 2010, generally with the community, such as the BFRO types? Do you see that day coming soon?
Maybe with the BFRO types, because they are investigators, okay? And yeah, you might have to, like the fellow trying to train the mule when he walked up and hit him with a 2x4. The first thing you got to do is get his attention. Okay, it's kind of the way BFRO is. You got to get their attention. But at least they're smart enough to know that what they're looking at is there. Okay, so you have something to start with. The 90% of society that just say it can't possibly be. If everybody carries a cell phone that takes pictures, we would have pictures. Well, they don't realize you get in those woods, and you just well leave that cell phone at home, because you're not going to get a picture of anything except the first tree.
Right.
Okay. There's just so much that they don't understand about what goes on out there, and those are the people that will never shift.
How about individual messages from Sasquatch? Because you're in touch with these psychically here. Have you heard anything over the weekend as far as their approval, their happiness with what we're doing?
Yes. And even up to change this person to speak now, and
okay. Venue changes, or not venue changes, but speaker changes.
Yeah, and then that occurred up till the night before we started.
Okay.
Okay. And do this, go with this person, go with it, and stress that. What Bob and I did last night on stage was not planned.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That was incredibly tight and organized, like you'd done it before. It reminded me of like Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra on stage.
No, we just or Lucy and Ethel.
Squatch pack.
Or Lucy and Ethel, I'm not sure. But no, I was walking up the stage, and the message came in: just do Q&A.
Yeah.
Yeah. We did want to clear up that massacre theory,
right,
barf, but that was the only thing that we pre-planned. Everything else was just off the cuff. Just told me to do it on the way up.
And Bob looked so pleased to show up there. He was with his wife. He was free to mingle as much as he wanted to. It was really nice to see him just kind of unguarded and off the leash.
Yes, it was. Judy doesn't come out much, but it was so nice to have her there. She's such a sweetheart. I've known her for a number of years, but I've been to their house many times. But she's just an absolute sweetheart. And I think she had a bowl. Every time I looked up, she was grinning ear to ear. So.
Yeah. Well, this is Tom Cantrell. I'm trying to push him to Plan 2020. If you get in touch with us here, I guess you can get in touch with Strange Brow Radio, or you can go to Tom Cantrell on Facebook or the Primal People Convention, and let him know that we want 2020. Today we're gearing up actually to do some didactic, in-house training at a really cool spot here, surrounded by Bigfoot country in the middle of Greenwater. Just beautiful. We may have saw some wolves. We definitely saw 2 large canines cross the road. It looked like a breeding pair. And so come up here, spend some time in the country, even if you're not up here Bigfoot, and just get outdoors and enjoy it all. This has been Strange Brow Radio, signing off. Thank you to each one of those folks that came down to the bowels of the convention center to tell me the deeper side of their personal stories. It's always nice to pull folks aside and go a little deeper, dive a little deeper with each one of them. If you would like to be a guest on Strange Brow Radio or have topic ideas, want to give some feedback, or just learn more about the show and how to help out, you can go on iTunes and subscribe. That would be the first move. Or go onto Podbean and subscribe. Share the show. Share it. All those things go a long way in producing the show and putting it in a different spot on the interweb. You can also shoot me an email at strangebrowradio@gmail.com, Facebook, Instagram, all under Strange Brow Radio. Also, I want to thank our sponsor again, Feral by Aaron at Etsy.com. A lot of merchandise sold at the convention here, but new merchandise coming up as always. That's Feral by Aaron, ERYN. It is a beautiful April evening. I am headed out, grab a bite to eat, and do a little stargazing. I suggest you do the same. And, of course, I will see you in the trees.